Good afternoon. Today we're reviewing the Nightcat Lanshan 1 single man bike packing tent. Is it the best tent for bike packing? Let's find out. Well, I've just cycled up into the Cardo Mountains for a quick overnighter because I promised to do this review for Nightcat. They've been good enough to send me the tent for nothing, and so it seems like a nice spot to set it up and to see how it fares on a January night. We've been having some frosts, but tonight it's only due to get down to 8. So up here in the mountains, maybe a bit less, maybe 4. So we'll see how it goes. But it is just a review of a tent. So if you're expecting some huge adventure, it's not that this week. We're just going to review a tent. I think it's a good tent. If you're into bike packing, keep watching to see if it's the right tent for you as well. Biggest thing, biggest plus, it is really light. It is really light. It's a trekking pole tent and it actually comes in at 950 grams plus the pole. But you don't have to use the pole. If there's lots of wood around, you could cut yourself a pole of the right length, or you can even at a pinch actually tie the top of a tent using a bit of cord to a tree. So you could actually get away with a decent sized one-man tent for 950 grams, which is pretty darn good. What I didn't think to bring was a tripod, which will make filming this rather easier, but we've got a spot. Just selected this spot because it's here and it just looks a rather nice place to wake up. The wind's going to be coming from a right, and this tent does benefit from having its bottom to the wind. So if we make sure that it's facing this way, it means that when I wake up in the morning and I unzip, I should be able to see that, which frankly isn't shabby, and the sun will be coming up from behind that mountain range. Right, hopefully you can see me. You need a trekking pole. You set your trekking pole to something like 120, 125. Either will work. But I'm setting it at 120. I'll tell you why later. And the rest of it, it just fits in that. That's a good sized single man tent with a very large vestibule. Anyway, let's pop it out. It comes in this little compression sack dry bag, which is quite handy because it does mean it goes down to a very, very small size. It's 24 centimeters by 15 centimeters round in its sack, so it does pretty much fit anywhere. And inside it's just the pegs, ultralight pegs, and then the tent. And the tent comes with an inner and an outer already together, so it's a very, very quick setup. And all you do is you peg out the base, the inner, the bathtub. You pin that out first. Well, I'll just show you and then I'll talk over, shall I? It might be a bit quicker. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice I'm not halfway up the most beautiful mountain. I'm actually in my garden. And I'm in my garden because Yesterday my battery ran out, so I didn't get to record anything to do with this fantastic tour. I'm giving the game away. I just nearly called it a fantastic tent. Let's get back onto the tent. So we'd managed to erect the tent, and then my battery ran out before I could talk about it. So let's have a think. It's a 120 centimetre trekking pole. Now there are ups and downs with having a 120 trekking pole. It's the longest one I have, so it has to be 120. What that means is that at the back here, you'll notice that the tent does tend to go along the ground. Now that's fine, particularly in the winter when there's quite strong winds and you don't want that wind to get in. You'll notice at the front there's actually quite a decent sized gap, and that's basically because it will allow the tent to ventilate. So that is a good thing, and that's designed that way. If you have a taller tent, it still retains a decent sized gap at the front, bearing in mind what I said about how the back must face the wind. So in the winter this is perfect. It's windproof. The wind will scoot straight up and over that tent with no problems at all. If you had a 125 centimetre trekking pole, it does mean that in the summer you can pitch the tent slightly higher and get a ventilation all the way around. Of course, it's not exactly a biggie because you undo the door, and I'll show you why that's not a biggie for this particular tent. So it has this ram's horn clip here so that you can undo either door, but it keeps the tension in the rest of the tent. I don't mind them. Other people seem to dislike them. Excuse me. It just unclips like that, which then means you can undo the door. Now you'll notice inside the whole of the inner is mesh, so in the summer this is a cool tent. So to get past my the difficulties with my 120 trekking pole and the fact that there's no gap around the back is simply by undoing the door, because you can undo both doors and roll them up all the way, and you've got mesh to keep the bugs out. And you can roll up the other side in the same way. And so the tent is completely open at the front if you want it to be. So talking about the specifics of it, the bathtub has got a hydrostatic head of 5,000 millimeters. I think that's quite high. It should be completely waterproof. I normally put a lining underneath it. That's just to stop any spiky things from actually puncturing it, which I don't want to happen. The other thing that I do is I've learnt from other YouTubers, and that's for the guideline on this side, the head end for me. I put a stick which actually pulls this part higher for your head to just give you another sort of 3 or 4 inches of headroom on the inside. You can see that. It's not essential, it's just a nice thing to do. Some people use another trekking pole, but there's always a stick around normally. Potentially you could use your bike. If you lie your bike down, you could use the handlebars just to make it, just to pull that edge up a little bit. And as to size, well, let's go in. Now, some people say it's difficult to get into. I don't know why. I'm huge. That's why I'm 6 foot. So you can see, there's me, hello. And just here is where I've pulled the head end up, which gives me, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches of space. And you've got a J-shaped door, which I find fine. Other people don't quite like so much. They say it's easier to get in with a T-zip, because then you can crawl in on one side of the pole and then out the other. Well, it's not difficult. You crawl in head first and then pull your legs in past. But it's a good amount of space. Like I say, I'm 6 feet, so I've got plenty of room at the back, top that end. I've got absolutely tons of space at the top end if I want to put a bag or my shoes or my boots. And the other thing it's got a lot of space is over here. I mean, there's another 50-60 centimetres of space over this side if you wanted to put other bits of kit of yours inside the tent. And if there's not enough space indoors, you still have this pretty enormous vestibule, which is, I guess it must be, well, it's big enough for a backpack on that side, and of course done up you've got the other side too. Internally it's a perfectly nice space to sit. You can sit inside. I've got about 4 inches of headroom, only in the middle next to my head because of the trekking pole. It's like a teepee shape. But I've got to say, I absolutely love this tent. I love the fact that it's big enough for me, and I'm a big guy. It's big enough for my kit inside with me, and for things that I want to stay dry, there's the vestibule. I love the fact that it's less than 1 kilo. You can, instead of using a trekking pole, which as I said mine is about 240 grams, you can get carbon poles to take its place, and they weigh about 60-70 grams. So you could have an entire tent, including a pole, for 1 kilo, 1 kilo, which is significantly less than pretty much anything on the market until you start paying silly money, and I'm talking silly money. Now this is available in the UK for £139. I believe it's about $159 in the US, not entirely sure, haven't checked. But it's not unproven technology. This has been around for about 4 years. It's one of the most highly regarded tents in the backpacking, ultralight backpacking arena, simply because of its price. It is waterproof. I've been out in the rain. I had a tiny drip, I do confess. It was actually for one of where the guy ropes attaches. I didn't really, the whole thing is seam sealed. Online it seems to suggest that there is no sealer on the seams for these tents, but there is. It's taped and it's waterproof. The only drip was directly on above my head where the guy rope attaches, and that was a matter of just mixing some silicone sealant and meths together, small amount, rubbing it in with my finger. Job done. I'd suggest you could do that beforehand, or it could be that your one doesn't leak. I know there's lots of reviews out there which say they have no leaks from the outset, and this was something, if it had been my foot end, I wouldn't have even noticed. It was literally because it was on my face, and I was unlucky enough to be outside when it was raining in Spain, and it never happens. Anyway, I'm quite enthusiastic about this tent. I'm sure you can tell. Ultra lightweight, very fast setup, inner and outer at the same time. You just put in the 5 pegs, and then seconds later the pole is in and erected, and as soon as that pole is up you can get in if it's absolutely heaving down, and then you could do all the fine adjustments later when you need to. One thing about it, the outer is made of sil nylon, which does have a property which it can absorb a little bit of water. And what that means is that it can get a little saggy. So there's 2 ways of dealing with that. One is that just before you go to bed, you go around again and retighten, maybe after a dew has fallen, and retighten the straps. The straps are the easiest things to tighten. It's a little tug and it's done. The alternative, and this is even easier, is that, like I've done here, you install the tent post at an angle, and then in the night, if you notice that it's starting to flap a little because it's become, in the rain, because it's soaked up a little bit of water, you literally just increase the angle of the tent post and it pulls everything tight. You haven't even got to get out of the tent. You haven't even got to unzip anything because you can do it through the mesh. So it's incredibly quick to do. So the fact that it's sil nylon and people say it can sag in the rain, who cares? It takes 2 seconds to just do that quick fix. I found it a little strange as well that some people complain that there's only one pocket for your valuables, for your phone or whatever. And? But why is that a problem? Why can't you have your phone there? Or, I don't know. I mean, there's a tag in the top. There's a clip for your lantern. You've got a pocket for your phone. I mean, what else have you got, really? I've got a little friend come to say hello. She loves tents. She didn't know until today that she loved tents, but she does love tents. I think she'd like to climb in with me. I've already had the cat in here. I thought he was going to spray. animals, eh? Who'd have them? Anyway, I'm going off-piste a little on this one, aren't I? So, it's a fantastic tent. It's made by Nightcat. It is the Lanshan one, but it's a little bit cheaper than the Lanshan one if you buy it from 3LUL, the company that make the Lanshan originally. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Downside, yes, there is a downside. The downside is that it's a trekking pole tent. Now, potentially, if you are somewhere where you cannot drive pegs in, if you're bikepacking, you might have decided to actually erect your tent in an underpass, so it could be concrete just to get out of the rain. In which case you won't be able to pitch this tent because it relies on the tent pegs, and they've got to go in the ground. If it's absolutely rocky and stony, there are ways around it. You can use a system of stones, which is probably one for another video, but you can use a big stone and a small stone in a sort of a locking system for guy ropes. So there could be an argument to say that you would need a full frame tent for certain situations, but of course that will come with a penalty with weight. So if lightness is your whole thing, really for the money, for £139, under a kilo, there is this. I don't think there's anything else. I'm sure other people in the comments will explain to me how there are many tents, but I've not been able to find any that are anything like the price, the weight and the price. So if your budget doesn't go to £300–400, it's the Lanshan one. I think that's all I can say about it. It's a great tent. I love it. If it's the sort of thing that appeals to you, you should buy it too. And with that, thanks for watching.